Hey everybody, it's the Gorillaz fan here. Now last time when I reviewed Fall Weather Friends, I said that I would be reviewing Suited for Success next. But I decided that since I'm at the halfway point of the first season, I would give you something a little special. What I'm going to give you is my top 5 best and worst episodes for the first half of Season 1. What I'm going to do is give a summary of each episode that's on this list and then explain why it made it to that specific spot on the list. Now, just to warn you, this is an opinion-based list, so if you have your own top 5 best or worst, that's fine. We all have our own tastes. If you do have something, just tell me in the comments. But with that said, here we go. The top 5 best and worst episodes of Season 1, Part 1. Number 5. Call of the Cutie. In this episode, Apple Bloom goes on a quest to find her cutie mark while trying to cope with bullies who have their cutie marks but are rubbing it in her face. The episode ends with Apple Bloom meeting 2 new friends, Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo, and they form their own little group called the Cutie Mark Crusaders. Now, the reason why this is only number 5 on the list is because it doesn't really focus on the main 6, because these are the main characters. Instead, our focus is on one of the main 6's sisters. And as we'll later learn, another one of the main 6 has a sister in the group too. But with that said, the episode was well written, and it dealt with the topic of bullying very well, and it's worthy of being on the best list. Number 4. Swarm of the Century. In this episode, the main 6 try to take out a swarm of bugs that are so adorable looking but have really huge appetites, and the episode ends with Pinkie Pie leading them out like a one-man band. So what I liked about this episode was that some of the humor was timed very well. Not to mention Pinkie Pie's little bit at the end with the one-man band and stuff like that. But other than that, the episode was great. The writing was good. All the characters were in character, and it was definitely worthy of being on the list. Number 3. Winter Wrap-Up. After a long, hard winter, it's time for the ponies to clean up all the snow and make way for spring. And, since Twilight's new, she's trying to find a good place to fit in and find her niche. But with the winter wrap-up being unorganized, she decides to take charge and eventually becomes the winter wrap-up captain. Now, there's a lot of great things about this episode, like the pacing, the writing, the acting, and not to mention that awesome song. I mean, to this day, I still have it stuck in my head. But it's that little touch that brings it up on to number 3 on the list. Number 2. Dragon Shy. In this episode, the ponies are tasked with going up to a mountain to get a dragon to stop snoring and prevent smoke from covering all of Ponyville. Meanwhile, Fluttershy is very nervous about the whole trip and is constantly doing everything in her power to try to get out of it. But when the dragon attacks her friends, Fluttershy balls up and makes the dragon cry and leave, thus saving Ponyville from an eternity of smoke. Now, this episode was definitely a lot of fun, especially seeing the dragon, which is pretty much Smaug, since he's sleeping in a cave full of jewels, just crying like a little baby when Fluttershy yells at him. And that's what I like about this episode, too, is it's a Fluttershy episode, and everybody loves Fluttershy. But yeah, it's definitely worthy of being number 2 on this list, but it's definitely not the best for the first half of the season. And what is the best? Well, we'll take a look right after we see the honorable mention. Honorable mention. Friendship is Magic, Part 1. For this countdown, I decided to give an honorable mention to both the best and worst categories. And to start out, I'm going to give you Friendship is Magic Part 1 for the best honorable mention. So, this is pretty much the pilot episode that introduces our characters and the situation, which is the arrival of the evil Nightmare Moon. And the reason why I kind of liked it was because it introduced the characters very well. There's nothing really special about it, just it's worth mentioning that it was a good intro to the show. Number 1. Applebuck Season. Applejack is exhausting herself trying to complete the apple harvest, and at the same time she has to do a whole bunch of favors for her friends. And the episode ends with her realizing that she does need help, and she does recruit the help of her friends, and the harvest goes perfectly. So this episode was definitely well written, and what I find interesting about this is that even though the third episode of the season was the Ticketmaster, this was the episode that should have started out the season. Well, with the exception of Friendship is Magic Parts 1 and 2, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But yeah, the episode was good, the characters were well written, and overall, it deserves the title of number 1. Number 5. Look Before You Sleep. While a thunderstorm runs its course, Twilight Sparkle decides that she, Rarity, and Applejack should have a slumber party together, despite the fact that Rarity and Applejack are polar opposites and cannot get along. But when the storm causes damage to the library, Applejack and Rarity put aside their differences and keep the tree from getting more destroyed. Now, this isn't a bad episode per se, but the reason why it's only number 5 on the worst list is because of how girly it got. As I said before, I had a little trouble watching the Slumber Party episode of the Powerpuff Girls because of how girly it could get. But I could put that aside knowing that the episode was well written. But for here, it's not enough to keep it off the worst list. Number 4. Friendship is Magic Part 2. In the continuation of the first part of the first episode, the main 6 decide to go into the forest to look for the elements of harmony which will help destroy Nightmare Moon. But when they get to the location, they find that the elements of harmony are broken. But when Nightmare Moon confronts the 6, Twilight states that all 5 of her friends, including her, have had the elements of harmony this whole time. And with their powers, they revert Nightmare Moon back to her normal self, which is Princess Luna, and Princess Celestia comes to reconcile with her sister. And of course, the Summer Sun celebration goes without a hitch. And of course, Twilight decides that she's going to stay in Ponyville so that she can learn more about friendship. So why is this on the worst list? Well, mostly because of how unsettled the episode is and how rushed the ending is. If you want more information about that, check out John Enter's review. He does really good My Little Pony reviews, but yeah, the episode itself isn't strong enough to continue the whole story, and it falls into the worst list. Number 3. The Ticketmaster. Twilight receives 2 tickets to the Grand Galloping Gala and has to choose which one of her friends can go with her. But when she decides that she would rather not go at all and risk her friend's satisfaction, she sends the tickets back only to get 6 more tickets to the Grand Galloping Gala for all of her friends. So yeah, you can already see the problem with this episode. The Deus Ex Machina ending. I mean, the rest of the episode is fine, especially with some of the comedy. And I like that Benny Hill bit, by the way. But, yeah, that's the biggest problem with this episode, is the ending. It would have been fine if the ponies decided not to go at all, but no. Princess Celestia has to troll us again with her, messed up ways, and we get one hell of a crappy ending. Number 2, Ghostbusters. This episode features the main 6 ponies of Ponyville scoffing at a magician pony named Trixie that comes into Ponyville, and saying that Twilight Sparkle is a better magician than her, even though Twilight Sparkle doesn't want to admit it and wants to keep a low profile. But eventually, Trixie says that she took down an Ursa Major once, and in order to prove it, these 2 idiots, Snips and Snails, they go into the woods and bring one out. When everyone looks to her to take down the Ursa Major, Trixie says that she isn't all that she's cracked up to be, that she's merely just a magician unicorn. But Twilight is able to lull the thing to sleep, as it isn't an Ursa Major but an Ursa Minor, a baby. So yeah, what's the problem with this episode? How about the fact that in the beginning, Trixie wasn't really doing anything to bother anybody? It's only when Rainbow Dash and Rarity go up to challenge her that she really does become an antagonist. But apart from that, Trixie isn't really much of a threat. I mean, she's got the voice of Kathleen Barr, that's for sure, but not much is there to her, and that's why the episode falls flat. Honorable mention: Griffin the Brush-Off. When a griffin named Gilda comes into town and reunites with her old friend Rainbow Dash, she decides to do everything in her power to keep her away from her friends, as well as show off the fact that she's a bully. But at the end of the episode, she shows her true colors, and Rainbow Dash does not want to be friends with her anymore. Now, it was kind of hard choosing whether or not to put this on the best or worst list, but I decided to put it on the worst list for one reason and one reason only. Gilda made Fluttershy cry. You do not do that. You do not fucking make Fluttershy cry. If you do, then you are fucked. And you get a spot on the worst list. Number 1. Bridal Gossip. All the ponies of Ponyville, including the main 6, are scared of this zebra named Zecora who lives in the Everfree Forest. So they decide to go into the Everfree Forest, but are affected by this plant called Poison Joke, which does a lot of weird, funny things to them. So they decide to go back into the Everfree Forest to look for Zecora, and she offers them a cure, and the lesson is that you should not judge a book by its cover. So why is this number 1 on the list? It's a botched up moral. Yes, you learn at the end that you can't judge a book by its cover, but look what the episode did to the characters. It completely dumbed them down. Even Fluttershy, who is like the kindest, most adorable, caring person in this whole universe, is scared of a zebra, something that looks different from her. And the fact that she gets a deep voice from that poison joke, it just kills me to see her like that. Oh, and let's not forget the fact that Apple Bloom was acting like a bully to her sister when the poison joke made her shrink down to the size of one of the Parasprites from Swarm of the Century. It's just so mean-spirited like this, and Twilight's behavior. At first, she's skeptical of her friends, but later on, she decides that her friends may be right. Dumbass! Why would you think that? And that's what brings it to the worst end of the worst list. Just, oh my god. And those are my top 5 best and worst episodes of Season 1, Part 1. I hope you enjoyed my list, and remember, if you want to give me your opinions on what you thought were the best episodes and the worst episodes, leave me a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Next week, I'll be tackling Suited for Success, and until then, this is the Gorillaz Fan, signing out.